Our lives are a string of insights, flashes of inspiration that can be the catalyst for new ideas. However, our pace of life these days means we tend to miss some of them completely. I'm Dave Hill, and I'm the host of the Simple Reflections podcast, a fortnightly series of interviews with people from all walks of life. Our conversations are an invitation to reflect on some of the simple insights my guests have had that have gone on to have a profound impact on their lives. So grab a cuppa and a biscuit, join us, slow down for a little while and see what shows up for you. Welcome to the next episode of the Simple Reflections podcast. Today I'm joined by a dear friend of mine, Dr Bill Pettit. Bill is still a practicing psychiatrist and almost 83. He's a bit of a marvel in that sense. He would also say that he's a student and sharer of the three principles. And it's through that I've got to know him over the last 7 or 8 years. I was very lucky to be invited by Bill to join in with the creation of the Missing Link for Veterans, a project that we collaborated on for about 18 months with Judy Sedgman, Affair Meyer and Brad Gallup. And we created about 9 hours worth of content, which is freely available for people to pick up. And while it was designed for veterans, actually it speaks to people from all backgrounds if they're carrying something from the past, and gives them an opportunity to potentially see things differently. And ever since then, I've been staying in touch and keeping up with him and loving what he's up to in the world. The main reason Bill's been previously on the podcast about 18 months ago, I think, and we had a lovely conversation then. But he seems to have picked up pace in the world in terms of what he's up to. And this year, in the coming months, he's got 2 programs that are coming up, and I wanted to get him on to talk about them so that we get an opportunity to hear what he's up to and why. The 2 programs are Witnessing Miracles, and the other one is One Cause, One Cure. Bill, thank you so much for joining us again.
No, thank you. And thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk just a little bit about these 2 courses. Both of our programs, I go between programs and courses. Courses sounds too, but they are going to be approved, and I need to check with Lynn to make sure they are being approved for CEUs for nurses, and a lot of, but through the California Nurses Association, and they a lot of other healing professions, because the California Nurses Association has such a good reputation and they give CEUs to a lot of other healing professions, physiatrists, people that work with physical, occupational therapists, other healing professions. So people might check if they need CEUs for their work, that there may well be available for both these courses. But
fantastic.
So should I talk a little bit about their inception? And
yeah, please. I'd love to hear about them.
Yeah, and you're right. I feel more invigorated in the last 18 months than I have for a long time. And for some people in the Three Principles community, that's been difficult. That I attributed that to 10 hours that I spent with the man who's become a dear friend, Steve Hardison, who has a book written about him. He reluctantly let it be written about him because it wasn't his favorite. He kept saying no, and until his wife said, this could help people, and it's called The Ultimate Coach. And that has offended some people in the Three Principles community, that I have gotten a boost in my understanding of what Mr. Banks was pointing to after 40 plus years, that I was able to see it more clearly after my work with Mr. Hardison, who's become a friend, and I walk with him fairly regularly, and we talk, and I say that because Sid, the last page of 141 the next to the last page of The Missing Link, Sid makes it very clear, follow your own internal wisdom.
Mm.
Truth is everywhere. Truth is everywhere, and every person has to make their own journey. And so like many leaders of things that became organizations, people have misinterpreted that this is the only way. And I think it's sad when that happens. There's a good people, and they're still very dear friends of mine. But I think it's important that it's okay for people to find, whether it's from some spiritual leader. I don't know if you're familiar. A lot of people find a deeper level of understanding of the spiritual nature of being a human being that Sid talked to from Course of Miracles.
Mm.
Others from The Way of Mastery, others from listening to Francis Silva or Byron Katie, or and I just encourage people to not be afraid to follow their own internal wisdom, because I spent 26 years being personally coached by, and I guess they would say now, I thought of it as mentored by Sydney Banks, and Sid would say that follow. This is a metaphor that the, I was talking to some people last night about my wife talks about the divine feminine, and some people get offended. I said, it's like the three principles. It's a metaphor trying to point to the truth. And Sid would say, don't get lost in it's a metaphor. These principles are not of this world. You're never going to find a box with them in it,
Mhm.
and yet they point in the most beautiful way to me to the truth, and it's not that I've found a fourth principle or anything. As Sid says, there's only three, but not. I just encourage people to not be afraid if their inner wisdom when they go to stillness draws them to listen to something that helps them see the spiritual nature of life more clearly. And you can always tell whether you're going in the right direction because you feel more love and compassion for yourself and others.
Mm.
It's infallible.
Yeah, it's so true.
Huh?
It's so true. The you know
It,
the thing I've loved about the principles is the invitation to learn from anything and everything.
yes.
Um,
Yes.
so I'll read all kinds of things and listen to all kinds of things because my understanding of how I operate might get an upgrade as a result of it.
Exactly.
And it's not because of what's been said or what I've seen or what I've listened to. It's what I've heard and understood for me. And and I think that that is the beauty of the principles in my mind is it creates the freedom to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I talked to you earlier that I just finished reading Denise Holland's Playing Freely. I believe the subtitle is oh shoot, I wish I was doing it justice. Playing Freely, understanding how the spiritual nature awakens athletic excellence, and it does. But it awakens every excellence in parenting,
Mm.
excellence in dealing with the death of your parents or a death of a loved one, excellence in navigating this very transient experience called life here on
Mm.
earth. It's transient. And now, whether we come back again and again until we learn enough, I don't know. I don't believe or disbelieve that. I think it's possible. Some people seem like old souls, like they've been here before, and whereas I felt like a very young soul that I had to fall in the hole four times before I had the idea to maybe walk around it. Whereas if I have a younger brother, John, who just seemed the first time to say, well, why don't I just walk around this rather than walk over the edge? So I don't know how, if he would say, I just saw Bill fall into the hole four times, so I decided there had to be another way to do it, right? But anyway, that's okay with me. I think one of the things that's become okay with me is not to know.
Mm.
And I think where, even Denise in her book makes a statement. She said, as you have more of what she calls spiritual consciousness, which what you and I have been talking about, is being aware of our spiritual nature, that we are really formless energy, divine energy, experiencing time with this body and brain, that some of us get a female body and brain and or female body and others get a male body, but it's the same energy
Mm.
regardless of the gender, regardless of the color of the skin, it's the same energy. If we could, I think if we ever truly saw that, I don't think wars and killing would be possible again. It really wouldn't be, because we'd see that we can't hurt another without harming ourselves. I mean,
Mm.
and at a whole different level beyond even the physical, I have come to see that holding myself in judgment impairs my ability to give and receive love to others. So the idea that no one is worthy of my judgment, including myself, that I've stumbled and bumbled and made mistakes, but I've done like every other human being. That's what psychological innocence means. It doesn't mean that we condone hurtful behavior in ourselves or other people. It means that we see that every human being, every moment, is acting from the level of understanding, the level of consciousness, the level of awareness that they have in that moment.
Mm.
I suspect there are things well, I'll just speak for myself. There's things that I've done that you could put a gun to my head, and at the level of understanding that I'm at now, I'd say, go ahead, because I'm not going to do that.
Mm.
You pull the trigger if you have to. It's okay. I'll be fine. My body won't be fine, but I will be fine. And 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 if we see psychological innocence in ourselves and others, I think that's the key to really being able to give and receive love freely and unconditionally.
Mm.
And I think I've seen that through my time with Steve Hardison Moore. And certainly it's what Sid pointed to all along. His chapter on love and forgiveness, I think, is one of the most powerful chapters in English literature. But to see that at a deeper level where you truly, I think I grew up very Catholic family, and there's a lot of beautiful things in that, like there is in every religion. But there's a lot of things that are, to me, uh, unhealthy. And one of them was, I think that we got that you were not supposed to have self-love. And I think, in fact, the whole thing of original, you're damaged and yeah. But the idea that you see that from a different perspective, no, that every human being is divine energy, as Thomas Merton talks about so eloquently, is divine energy in a form, and it can't be broken. How can divine energy be broken? It can't. It's an illusion. It's an
Mm.
illusion to think that it can be broken. And I think that a healthy self-love truly is essential to one's ability to give and receive love freely.
Mm.
I think without, huh?
No, sorry.
No, let me
I
stop.
was going to say, that I think there are stages to that where people get more comfortable with things in terms of what I've seen in myself and others is we tend to be more comfortable giving love than we are about receiving it. And at some point, that light switch comes on, and you go, "Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, I am deserving of this." There isn't anything that says that I'm not, other than my thinking about it, other than my perception, my judgment of whether I deserve this or not. And it's wonderful being able to explore that, play with that, see how that shows up. Um, and sometimes relearn and re-see these things coming back again and again and again, normally because it hasn't quite sunk in yet. And that's absolutely okay.
Yeah. And even our language, and please don't hear this as criticism, is when we say it hasn't sunk in yet, it's not about anything sinking into our intellect. It's about a realization from
Mm,
within. And I
yeah.
love Sid's statement. I think it's on page 160. I don't have it in front of me, the quote. It's on the Enlightened Gardener, I think page 162, where he says, as vast as, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the exact quote, but it blows me away every time I read it. He says, as vast as the billions of galaxies and the billions of stars, as magnificent as that is, it's minuscule compared to what's within the consciousness of every human being on earth. Wow, pardon me? Did you really just say that? But I think that what you're pointing to, Dave, is that we start to, in little bit incremental bits, have that realization
Mhm.
that what's within our consciousness, what we are, what is our truly our nature, which there's a woman named Dr. Lisa Miller. I'm still trying to be in touch with her through a mutual contact. Wrote a book called The Awakened Brain. I might have mentioned it before,
Mm.
and I think you'll love it if you get a chance. She was from the University of Columbia in a PhD program there, and she had incremental insights through her life that I'm not going to take away that that led her to awarenesses that sound like Sydney Banks, but it wasn't in a 3 day. It was like most of us. It was one insight after another that just came in periods. One of them, here's this lady who's a university Ivy League PhD psychologist who has a powerful insight. She's drawn to go to South Dakota to a Lakota Sioux meeting, and she has this powerful insight. And just what we were talking about earlier, of not being discriminatory of where you can have the insights, because
Mm.
it's a great remembering uh, of what you already have. It's
Yeah.
not, we're so used to learning stuff in books, and I love that. I mean, Sid talks about there's two ways of two sources of knowledge, two types of knowledge. One is learned in books, one is learned in videos and different sources, listening to people, and the other is a recognition, a realization of what God. What I'm going to use the word God. If you don't like the word God, use whatever you do. But there's something behind life that has been sought from the people that wrote on the caves 20,000 years ago, trying to understand what is this behind life, and
Mm.
what's our connection to it. And I think that's okay. But to know that there's two types of knowledge, one is through the intellect, and the other is a realization of what we already have. And I love the simplicity of what my late wife, Sue, she said, Bill, this is really simple in 1984. And I said, well, what do you mean simple? 'Cause I was not making the three principles simple in 1984. And I'm sure I've told you many times, but she looked at me, she said, well, I see that every human being on earth, and in fact, every human being that's ever been on earth, the entire time they're here are one of two places. I said, really? She said, yeah. They're either in their life, in the now, or they're in their thoughts.
Mm.
And you cannot be both places at the same time. Now,
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that if you watch children playing, or if you watch an older couple walking hand in hand, looking lovingly into each other's eyes, it's not that they're not thinking, but they're not in their thoughts.
Yeah.
They're in their life in the present moment. And that is where the gold is.
Yeah.
People say, why does Sid talk so much about the now? Why does Eckhart Tolle talk about the now? Why do people, anybody that's had a real power, because that's where the gold is.
Mm.
It's in the now. And I think I've also experienced, I mean, I know we've been rambling. We haven't even talked about my two courses, but we have in a way, because this is an accumulation of 42 years of if some people say I'm a good teacher, and I say, if that's true, it's because I'm a slow learner. So, so I can dumb it down because that's the only way I've learned is to have it dumbed down for me and have it incremental. And I don't use the word dumb it down pejorative, just the idea that we all learn, and it's okay to learn. Every fruit ripens at its own pace.
Mm.
And if we can not be in comparison, oh, I wish I was a apple, or I wish I was an orange, or something else that ripened quicker than I do. No, let's just be what we are, whether we're a lemon or a grapefruit or whatever, and be grateful. I can't tell you how many times in the 26 years that I was spent hours talking over the phone and hours in his presence, that Sid didn't use the word gratitude.
Mm.
He said, it's really simple, Bill. If a person, it's okay to want to see more. That's okay. That's natural to say, boy, I want to see more. I mean, you and I would. But he said two things about that. If you attach your happiness, I can't be happy until I see more, then you're sabotaging yourself.
Mm.
You're sabotaging yourself. The other thing is, it's okay to want to see more, but if you try to see more and you don't see more at that moment, the only thing you can use is your intellect, and you'll just analysis paralysis, right? But if instead you wish to see more, and your response to that is, I am so grateful for what I've already seen. And I'm so grateful for what I have, even though I lost this and I lost this. I'm so grateful for what I still have.
Mm.
That feeling of gratitude 100% of the time, which is a fairly high percentage, I think, as last I looked at my math book. 100% of the time, Sid said, will carry you forward to see more.
Mm.
That feeling, that positive feeling, will carry you forward to see more 100% of the time.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Me too.
the idea that insight always comes with a positive feeling. I see sometimes people say, "Oh, wisdom guided me," and it was very upsetting, and it was upsetting to other people, and I mean, it disturbed. No, wisdom is always wrapped in love, in loving feeling. Sid at one point even says, I was watching a video the other night, and said that they're the same thing seen from a different perspective, love and wisdom.
Mm.
And I say, don't tell everybody, because some people will be offended, but I think they cohabitate. I think they cohabitate. They always, whenever they take a trip, they always fly together. They're always hand in hand. I think they're having a relationship, love and wisdom. And that's I think a light heart is important too, because
Hugely.
it takes us out of our thinking into the present moment. You can't be
Mm.
thinking and in your thoughts at the same time.
It's when I'm working with veterans,
Mm,
it's lightness that I'm looking for.
yes,
I'm looking for a smile or a laugh or you know, a change in their mood,
yes.
and then get curious, ask them to get curious about that because it was all dark and miserable a minute ago. How can, if it's dark and miserable, How can this stuff be showing up? And that starts a conversation that goes off in a direction that's completely unexpected for them. Um,
Yes.
and it's, it's the same thing I do with all of my clients, but it's most noticeable in that cohort because they can get so caught up in the history of their experience and what that means.
And the past is something we cannot change,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
if we've decided because X, Y, and Z we've done or we've experienced, we can never be happy, then we're giving ourselves a life sentence of misery until we die.
Mm.
And I have never met the person that wants to be righteously miserable and then die. And the other way of saying it is that chapter on enlightenment where Sid says everyone seeks enlightenment. And I think you can say also, if you read that chapter what he's saying is everyone wants to be at peace.
Mm.
Everyone wants to have a connection, to feel experience a connection between themselves and the divine, and so that they can be present. I mean, it all boils down so they can be in the only thing that exists, which is now. Nothing else exists.
Mm.
And that's unsettling to some people, but it's
Yeah.
true. That now, right now, is all that exists. And infinity is just an infinite number of nows. That's all it is. You can wrap yourself into a tizzy even about it. I think there's actually a phobia of infinity. I forget the name of it is that if you get thinking about anything too much, it'll scare the poop out of you, right? But it's not the thing. It's your thinking about it that's
Yeah.
creating, which is what you're.
Yeah. Every
And
time.
and your presence, I'm sure your presence, there's something powerful about being present that pulls other people into the presence.
Mm.
You can't, if you're not in the present, you're upset that they're not in the present and you're trying to pull them into the present by trying to pull them in. No. But if you're just present with a lighthearted, loving feeling and listening with an open heart and an open mind, there's something powerful about that because at the core of everyone's being is love and understanding, is is integrity and wisdom, is passion and compassion. So your presence, my presence, your presence will pull people. It's hard to stay not present in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
presence. And we all know people like that they walk into a room. They can walk into the room and be on the other side of the room, and the feeling in the room shifts
Hmm.
because of their presence.
Yeah.
And I think, and this will sound however it sounds, but I had a number of people when I was on the consultation liaison service and teaching the residents for those years at West Virginia University. I had a number of the ER physicians, including the head of the emergency room, said when we looked and we saw that you were on call that day, we were really, we felt happiness inside because we knew that if we had a patient who was disruptive, who was, wanting to tear things apart, and if we could just control them long enough to get you down there, and most of the time, your presence with them within a few minutes, they de-escalated. They got present. And it may have been just the de-escalation that they were willing to take the medicine. And instead of having a shot, they were willing to take a little glass of a combination of a couple of medications that 30 minutes later they would feel a lot more relaxed.
Mm.
But I think that's underrated, the power of presence. And I think it's important for us all to remember that because we sometimes, at least I'll speak for myself, if I get insecure, then I go to my intellect to try to think what to do instead of saying, no, all I have to do is get present
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'll be gifted. Not the next 10 steps, but I'll be most likely, but I'll be gifted the next step.
Mm.
And that's all I need is the next step.
Yep.
And then the
It's
next step.
sorry.
Huh?
I was just going
No.
to say it's hugely reassuring that that is the thing, and getting caught in my intellect at some point I'll get the reminder to go, okay, yeah, let's
Yes,
slow this back down again. And at which point things shift and change.
exactly. And I think what you're referring to, tell me if I'm wrong, because I don't mean to put words in your mouth. When you say you become aware, it's because we become more and more sensitive
Mm,
to the feeling level. You know, Sid says we're going to create psychological viruses. We're going to do that. But we've been given a virus detector, and it's our feeling level. And
mm.
I think part of what's happened for me, and I suspect from listening to you and knowing you for these years, is that that virus detector is becoming more and more sensitive to sooner and sooner realizing I'm going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And that sensitivity of increased sensitivity and being grateful, wow, you know, I may not be as sensitive as this person or that person, but I'm grateful that I'm going in the right direction towards of my sensitivity. It's
Yeah.
my job. And that gratitude leads to more sensitivity. And we find that we don't stay lost as long. And when we are lost, it doesn't go as far down as it used to. That right? That we catch
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
So the distance between lostness increases and the severity of the loss becomes less because we're more sensitive to being lost. You know, I think even a good forest ranger probably occasionally, even after 25 years, could still get lost in the forest.
Hmm.
But one of the differences is he becomes more aware that he's lost sooner than somebody who doesn't know that. And he knows how to get home.
Mm.
He knows how
Yeah.
to get and for us to just realize it's so simple to get home. All we have to do is to answer the call to the stillness of now.
Yeah.
That's all. And to start to see the symptoms that we and that's and then I'd like to go into the course after my
Yeah, please.
as an Irishman, it's only taken me 43 minutes to get here to right after you invited me to do it. Um, but the idea that oh shoot, now I lost my train of thought. Do you know where I was going with that?
We were sort of getting lost and then we've got lost getting lost.
Yeah, we
Um,
got lost getting lost. But just the idea that you can well, we'll see. My mom used to say, Billy, when I wouldn't remember, she says, Billy, it was either a fib or not important. And I said, well, Mom, yeah, I wasn't going to fib to you, so it must not be important. So it would come back to me. So it'll come back. So witnessing miracles and the second one, we've already had a course called One Cause, One Cure, Never Broken, Nothing Lacking, but and we've struggled with making sure that this is different. But so the witness, they came to me really out of quiet, out of being willing not to know, not to see what to do next. And I awakened to I was gifted from that place of consciousness that's within all of us, that of love. I think there's a river of love and wisdom that flows through the consciousness of every human being on earth. And my 80, almost 83 plus years, it's not to be ignored. It's 83 plus years of knowledge, intellectual knowledge, and experience.
mhm.
To me, is that like a magnificent reservoir of knowledge and experience when combined with love and wisdom, the river of love and wisdom creates magic. And and if I start thinking that I'm doing that, then I'm going to immediately get in trouble. But if I'm realizing that I'm co-collaborating with universal mind or the intelligence of God or whatever, then I can have a magical journey as a co-collaborator. But the symptoms that we call symptoms, psychiatric symptoms, our low, our mood getting lowered, our tension, our anxiety getting higher, our sleep getting disturbed, our thinking getting muddled. If we could start seeing those and are having physical pain that has no seems to have no origin from a physical problem.
Mhm.
If we start to see those instead of, oh, now with the other problems I have, challenges I have in life, now I have this. Instead, if we see those as love letters, as alarms, as summon us to the stillness of the present moment, that letting us know that if we continue to try to find our way with the intellect, we're just going to be more lost in the forest. But if we can see those, quote, symptoms as love letters summoning us to the stillness of the now that we've talked about, that's a game changer.
Mm.
That's a whole game changer. So witnessing miracles came to me so June 3rd through the 6th, which is a Tuesday through a Friday, and then the next Tuesday through a Friday, the 10th through the 13th. Now that's 8 days. That's a lot. That's a lot to ask of people, and I don't. We've only got a few people right now, both online and in person, because it's going to be in person, and it's going to be online, available around the world. And what are those 8 days going to be about? Well, they're going to be about my 42-year journey of witnessing miracles, starting in January 1st, 1983, when I met George Pransky. And then April 1st, a few months later, I sat in the presence of Sydney Banks. And within 30 minutes, I knew that my going in and out of clinical depression for 20 years had ceased. I knew that within 30 minutes. I didn't I didn't I didn't see exactly how I was going to do it, but I saw that I was creating my depression, as you've heard me say many times, by 6 to 9 hours of worry, guilt, resentment, upset, overanalysis, unresolved grief. I didn't see how to stop doing that, but once I saw that my depression was being caused by me innocently misusing this power of thought and not being aware of a wisdom, of another resource called innate wisdom or divine wisdom within me, that the combination of those two, if I started looking in that direction, I had new hope, that because I had thought my depression was caused by my genes, caused by my work as a psychiatrist with people talking about suicide every day, my family, my finances, my all these external things that many of which I had very little control over. Some had already occurred in my life, so I couldn't, right? And I'm sure, like the veterans that you work with, if I believe that the past or even the present external things have the power to take away my well-being, I'm pretty much screwed. But if I have a glimpse, even if at my present level of understanding, that's my experience, if I have a glimpse that that's just an illusion, that I am innocently, and innocently is the key word, I am innocently creating my experience every moment of my life.
Mhm.
That's a game changer. And so witnessing miracles, I'm excited because over the next 10 days or so, I'm going to be doing a video each day of about 3 minutes. I may start later today. And the video is going to be about the first day, because these 42 years are going to cover 9 different settings, professional settings in 8 different states. And the challenges that were met there, the insights that I had, the incremental insights, personal insights that I had, the insights that as an understanding, the people that were these group of 20 or 30 people at the beginning, and 4 or 5 or 6, that were close around Sid, our level of understanding evolved over. I mean, in 1984, this was called neocognitive therapy. And you were not to talk about the spiritual nature. Now, that wasn't from Sid, but that was from people that wanted to make this into a psychology.
Mhm.
and felt uncomfortable talking about the spiritual nature, even though Sid, I can't tell you how many times he put his head in his hands and, and then said, "This is a spiritual understanding, based understanding. Yes, yes, it has psychological implications, but even psychological is really the study of the soul, the psyche, the formless. It's not behavior. That's not real psychology, right?" And so there'll be my insights, the insights of the people that I saw, the evolution, and the witnessing of miracles that started even when there were no books at the beginning in 83. There was no books, there was no videos. There was, you listened and you listened, started to listen from within, and you started having these realizations that you had an innate wisdom inside yourself. And, something that I've seen, I think in the last few months, that I just laugh at. I laugh at, David, because after 42 years, it's been less than 6 months that I've really seen how 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 funny, I don't want to use the wrong words here, but how laughable it is that I could spend 80 plus years of my life not recognizing that, wait, the flowers have an internal guidance system. My lemon tree has an internal guidance system. The squirrel has an internal guidance system. It hides enough nuts, not just for itself. I recently learned that it hides many more nuts than it will ever need for the winter. It feeds a lot of other animals by the nuts that it hides. I didn't know that. The whales go down to the south of Hawaii, off our west coast, up around Vancouver and stuff, and they come back every year, and with their new babies, and every year they have a new song, and they all have the same freaking song.
Well, you get
And
bored of the old ones.
what?
You gotta have a new tune. You get bored of the old ones.
I guess. And our hummingbirds, the last winter we spent in the last spring, our hummingbirds, each one of the three hummingbirds came and did a little dance for us for about 30 to 40 seconds. Knowing, if we're all the same, they knew we were not going to be there when they came back the next spring. I mean, I get almost tearful because one of them, I wasn't even going outside, so it came right up to the kitchen window and it did its dance. And they go 2,000 miles south, and they come back to the same nest in Michigan, in Tipton, Michigan, until they no longer are alive. Why would I not realize that of course we have an internal guidance system? The only two differences are, one, I don't know that the lemon tree or the coyote or the animal, Wolverine, can become aware that they are divine energy, and that divine wisdom is showing in their ability to do what X, Y, and Z. And they don't have the free will to do this to that divine wisdom, saying, I don't care about divine wisdom, I'm doing it my way. And then wondering why, as Thomas Merton says, it doesn't seem like disaster would occur on most occasions, or if not all, when one does that, but it does. And even the disaster is just a loving information to try to let you know not to go that direction again, down a one-way street, and wonder why you have 85 cars and trucks coming at you at 60 miles an hour. And so the miracle started happening. The first one I've told you many times was when I saw my father just 6 weeks later or 8 weeks later, when we were traveling. I saw my father through the eyes of unconditional love for the first time in my life. And we didn't even talk about it. But he told me more stories about his life as a child growing up in the next 3 days than he had told me in 41 years,
Mm.
because he felt that lack of judgment and the love and understanding that I had in my heart for him. So before I started having people like the man that you've heard many times who had been in the state hospital, maybe God gave me that first one just to go right to the extreme of to shatter any belief that I had that there were exceptions, that this man with 47 years in the state hospital, after 2.5 group sessions, would suddenly start laughing. And after 10 minutes of laughing, when I asked him quietly what was so funny, to say, I realized I've made myself crazy with my own thinking for 47 years, and I don't have to do it anymore. Wow. That was the beginning of witnessing miracles. And that's what this 8-day program is going to be. And it's really, even if I ended up with 3 people, I mean, at some level I care because I get insecure about money, but at other levels, I don't know. No, my purpose is to leave, and the man that's going to do this is a man named Eric Thurison, who's worked with the National Football League. He's worked with major television, and he has his own CEO of his own company that makes videos and that are done internationally. And he's going to make these videos of this recording. So, and everybody who comes to the course, either in person or online, and even later purchase it, will get a copy for perpetuity. They'll have it for themselves. They're free to use it as any part of their business. No, they don't have to give me any percentage. If they want to send some back for my grandchildren, that's fine. But there's no obligation, and they want to translate it eventually into one of the 200 languages around the world or whatever there are. That's fine, because I'm making this so there'll be a recording, because I think someday that recording will be in every medical school, not only in the United States, but throughout the world. I think someday it'll be in every psychology, every psychiatry. I think, if not every, in a lot of seminaries, because truth is, can't, true. I've been blessed to sit for 26 years with Mr. Banks, along with his writings, but I've been blessed as a psychiatrist to then take this into the world and see people from every diagnostic category in the ICD-11 or DSM-5 come to peace, regardless of past traumas, complex PTSD, eating disorders, addictions, you name it, and many, many physical. I mean, I saw things physically. I had many people who, once they got peace of mind, they had to be stopped. Their blood pressure medicine had to be stopped. Their need for insulin went down drastically because they weren't creating all the high blood sugar from activating the stress response. I've had people whose asthma disappeared. I've had people whose allergies of 30 years disappeared. I've had a person who had such chronic lung disease that she was on 24-hour oxygen. And I've got a letter somewhere from her pulmonologist that says, I've never seen this before in my life. Her lung studies are now normal. Well, people say, well, a miracle. Well, miracle, yeah, but maybe it's not an exception to the rule. Maybe it's the rule in action. Because every time you and I breathe, and if you're like me, I haven't been aware that I've been breathing.
Not until you mentioned it.
No, but there's little alveoli, they're little muscles. So if we were in a really high level of chronic stress, those muscles would be tight, and we'd be wonder why we were wheezing and having trouble getting air in and out. So it makes sense that as a person comes to peace, the air goes in and out. And even if we started having wheezing and difficulty, if we saw that, oh, It's a signal. I need to go to the stillness of now.
Mm.
And it doesn't mean that sometimes you don't have to go see a doctor and get the right medicine for now. As Sid said, that medicine has got energy too. But it may be that that's a window of opportunity, like it is in psychiatry. Those medicines can be a window of opportunity to calm a person down so where they can listen inside and
Mm.
have realizations that lessen the need for medicine. And the last thing I'll say, and then I want to listen because I don't know how long you want it to go here, but um, even the medicine, I tell people, if you're coming to me to get off the medicines, you better go see a different doctor. They'd say, why, wait a minute. I know a lot of people that came to see you when you were actively practicing and they ended up off their medicines. I said, well, that's true, but that wasn't ever my purpose. And I wouldn't allow that to be their purpose either. If I got them into a collaborative agreement that our only purpose was for them to find a deep level of peace, where giving and receiving love was easy. In that process, their physiology changed and their need for their medicines incrementally decreased. And if they ended up needing still 5 or 10% of that's fine with me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe someday, 10 years later, they won't need that. But it's not about the medication, it's about peace of mind. If
Mm.
people could only see that. So can I take 3 minutes that I haven't spent an hour? Is that okay?
Mm.
So the
Sure.
8-day course is going to be an 8-day thing that will be the film will be in, but yours as a participant will be forever to use however you use. And hopefully there'll be enough of them all around the world that will get translated eventually into all different languages. The other course starts in July, and and it's going to be the first 3 Wednesdays in July. There's going to be 2 hours from 11 o'clock. I think it's 11 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. and and for 9 months. And I'm going to start with the principles for 6 hours, but then there's going to be I'm going to go through every diagnostic category, the criteria in all the ICD-11 and the DSM-5, and show how even the symptoms are really just love letters summoning us to the presence of now. And that once you realize that you are divine energy in a form, it's impossible to be broken. It's an illusion. As Sid says, only to the level that all psyches are the same. There's no difference. And only to the level of spiritual and psychological understanding does it appear to vary.
Mm.
Wow. Wow. That's what has allowed me. It's not a technique when I've sat with people and said something about and sometimes, most of the time it's incremental, but sometimes it's been dramatic. People coming out of full-blown manic episodes right in front of my eyes because they heard it. And they would say, the first thought I had was, this guy's crazier than I am. And the next thought was, wow, what he just said is absolutely true. I'm completely mentally healthy. I just don't know it. And maybe that's a place for me to stop jabbering.
Mm. But I'm so grateful that I came across you 7 or 8 years ago. Um, it has been your professional and personal experience and your regaling of that and retelling that, and with all the sort of ups and downs that are in there too, that has given me the confidence to do what I do today. The the thing that sort of landed for me, I suppose, in the last year which talks exactly to what you've been talking about in our conversation today, is that we are all designed to thrive. And that everything about us, all of those symptoms that you've described, are pointing us back to that. And I have no doubt that these two courses, two programs of yours, will be, one, amazingly successful in terms of for the people that are there listening and learning. But I also have no doubt that it's going to really change the way things are looked at, because there are not many people with your collection of experience and subject matter expertise that can share this. And I'm eternally grateful to you for taking the time to create them.
Well, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm acknowledging. And I think I'm grateful that at my age that I'm still vertical and still most of the time without significant pain and allowed to continue forever, for whatever time I am allowed to continue to share the gifts that I've been given, and which have been many. Yeah, and you're one of them.
Bill, thank you so much for joining me today. I'll make sure links to both your programs and to the missing link for veterans are in the show notes for this, so people can find it. And I'll put a link to your website as well.
Yeah, the website is Dr. Bill Pettit, drbillpettit.com. Yeah. Okay.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been lovely to see you.
Thank you for joining us today. If you've enjoyed the conversation, feel free to subscribe and join me and my new guest next time. If you're interested in the work I'm doing, or you think I can be of service to you or your organisation, please email dave@simplicityofmind.co.uk. Remember, see if you can find time to slow down and reflect. Those simple ideas might be worth listening to. Take care, and I hope you can join me in a couple of weeks.